Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I have a few from Australia. All happened in the same area of bushland. Be walking on gravel trail, super dense bush either side. Stop at a nice shady spot before a bend in the trail to have a smoke. 15 minutes pass. Hear footsteps in the gravel around the bend. Definitely bipedal. I can't see the trail there because the bush is too thick. They get closer and closer. I kick the gravel a bit to let them know that I'm there so they don't come around the corner and get surprised or whatever. Footsteps stop as soon as I make noise. Get up and have a look around the bend. Nothing. No one. Who was footsteps.jpg? There's no way they could have moved off the trail in the 15 seconds between me kicking the gravel and looking around the bend. Definitely wasn't a roo or anything either, as I didn't hear it move off into the bush. Roos are noisy as hell. Be 15 or 16-year-old me. Ride my BMX bike to a small set of jumps and berms built deep in a woods. Have to get off and cross swamps and shit to get there. My third time there. As soon as I get there, I can feel that something isn't right. Feel like I'm being watched. Do a few laps of the little track anyway. Stop for a drink of water. Suddenly, a massive feeling of fear hits me. See something black and roughly 3 foot high on the ground about 20 meters in front of me. It moves left to right through the undergrowth, covering about 10 meters of bush in about 1 second. Nope, out of there and never go back. It didn't move like any sort of animal. It seemed to glide through the undergrowth. I tried to convince myself that it was all a trick of the light or shadows or something, but another experience I had with these creatures in a nearby area made me change my mind on that. Next experience. About 18 years old. I love fishing. I go fishing every weekend in rain, hail, or shine. Hear about a spot up a creek that is only accessible at low tide and is supposed to be crazy for flatheads on a full moon. Let's go.jpg. Go out there with 2 friends and a girl I was keen on at the time. It's about a 15-minute walk through mud and sand, including a 10 meters wade through waist-deep water. This is all in Hervey Bay, Queensland, so there are sharks everywhere and a very real chance of a croc being around. Fish for about 2 hours, and it's terrible. Only small whiting and a few shovel noses. Decide to explore the sand flats a bit before the tide changes and we have to leave. Find a small trail into the mangroves about 1 meter wide, standing about 10 meters from it. Suddenly, something about 3 feet high runs incredibly fast from the sand flats into the trail. Everyone says that it looked like a troll, only half joking, deciding it must be a feral pig or dog. We ended up leaving about half an hour later, but the girl I was keen on forgot her phone. Go back with her to look for it, hoping to get in her good books if we find it. She thinks she must have dropped it while we were exploring. Go back to the sand flats near the trail. Suddenly she stops dead in her tracks and I hear her gasp. There is an animal standing in front of us, clearly illuminated by the full moon. About 3 feet high, completely covered in hair, arms down past its knees. It runs on 2 legs up the trail in the mangroves. Run as fast as we can out of there. I spoke to a local Aboriginal elder about it later, and he told me that it was a Junjudee, which is basically a small yowie-like creature. There is barely any information online about these things, but I did find an anecdotal reference to mangrove men living in North Queensland which resemble what I saw.
8 years old, living in Wamuran, Queensland. In the middle of nowhere, our heroin-addicted mother leaves myself and my brothers and sisters alone for the night, to go who knows where. The front door is shit and cannot be locked without a key, which my mother has. Later that night we hear some mumbling outside. We open the front door and see right in front of us an old dishevelled man holding onto his shoes. He begs us to let him in, saying that he was followed. We live kilometres from any other house, so we slam the door shut and have to sit by it until Mum comes home. She didn't see any man, but asks us about the shoes on the doorstep. A few days later, our mum leaves us home for the night once again. Outside, our dog is tied up with a long chain to the clothesline. Later in the night, we hear scuffling under the house. It's our dog. He's freaking out, barking like crazy at something. We look out the window. The chain is broken, but we can't see anything outside. A voice begins barking back at the dog. It circles our house like this for a good 10 minutes, eventually ceasing. Dead silence for the rest of the night. We didn't sleep that night. Next day, our dog is missing. We hear an ear-piercing scream outside. Our mum is out in the bush behind our house. She rushes to the back door, hysterical. She won't tell us what scared her. We have to leave. We have to leave, she utters over and over. Me, being a little brave and a little stupid, decided to wander over to where she was behind our house. I see a trickle of blood leading from under the house, all the way through the backyard, to a gully a little further into the bush. At the end of the trail was our dog, or what was left of it. I shit my pants a little and run back to the house. Mum is still shaking, but won't tell us anything. Later, she has some friends over to tell them all about it. I overheard her tell them that it wasn't the dog that scared her. She asks her friends to stay for the night, but nobody can. It's just her and the kids for the rest of the night. We're too poor to stay anywhere else. Our mum is not the most calm and rational person around. She begins her preparations. She makes each of us choose a weapon. My older brother gets a BB gun. My sister has some wooden sticks, and I have a vacuum cleaner pipe. Mum has a kitchen knife. We sat in the back room, eyes on the backyard for the whole night. Our druggy mother is making things worse by telling us not to separate and not to sleep or we'll be taken. The most frightening experience of my life. Nothing happened that night, but my mum recounted the issue to some relatives of ours. That was one of the last times I saw her. We were taken from that house and moved away to live with an uncle. I later found out that she spiraled out of control once we left, became extremely paranoid. Clothesline was hung up around the perimeter of our backyard. Razor blades hung from the line. The windows had been sealed up. Mum died a year later. She was found hanging from a tree in the bush behind our house. I never did find out why she did it, what she saw, what happened to our dog, the old man, any of it.
My terrifying paranormal activity experience. The following events all took place during mid-2011, and I stress that the following is all true, with no embellishment, exaggeration, or selective memory. I made a point of taking notes during the whole process at the time, and am thankful for that now. So in 2011, I decided to make the big move away from my sleepy hometown and try out an entirely different style of living. I, along with my cousin, found a small unit to rent in a leafy suburb of South Brisbane, Australia. The unit was one of 5 in the one structure, a large old Queenslander-style house that had been renovated to be split into these 5 small dwellings. A Queenslander-style house, very similar in style and layout to where I had moved into. Nothing untoward occurred at all during the early weeks and months of this new adventure. We settled in, slowly furnished the place, and began to grind into a routine. Bumps in the night were commonplace, with very distinct sounds being heard frequently night after night, such as bush turkeys walking on the iron roof, the clicking of geckos on the ceiling, the general groans of an old home. It is important to note that with the wooden floors, wooden cupboards, doors, window frames, etc., the sounds of shifting and general wood strain was almost constant during a still night, but you learn to filter it out. Noises that are different or out of place become easily noticeable among the cacophony. Something changed, however. Several months later, my girlfriend had all but moved in with us, and it was around this time that something changed. I remember the first night I realized something was wrong, so clearly. Everyone had not long gone to bed, and my girlfriend and I were laying in bed watching a movie on my computer. The bedroom door was closed. We heard clear, distinct, heavy footsteps out in the living room, directly outside the bedroom door. I assumed it was my cousin, who must have gotten back up out of bed and thought little of it. The footsteps, however, appeared to enter a pattern of pacing back and forth, and were so heavy that bare feet could not have caused them. More like boots. They sounded as if they approached my door, stopped, and then went quiet. I got out of bed, called out and opened my bedroom door to a house in darkness, my cousin still in bed sleeping soundly. I was pretty unnerved, but played it down so as not to scare my girlfriend, and returned to bed. The following weeks had this pattern repeated maybe 4 or 5 times, 2 of which my cousin wasn't even home to have somehow caused the footsteps. As I made note of earlier, by this time I knew the sounds of the house really well, the sounds that filtered through from the neighbors, the animal life and the structure itself. These sounds were clear, distinct and footstep made, with no discernible source. Around the 5th or 6th occurrence, things took an unsettling turn when the footsteps, as they did, approached the bedroom door after minutes of pacing. This time, when they stopped, what sounded like hyperventilating or heavy breathing could be heard from the other side of the door. By this stage, my girlfriend was terrified to even go to bed at night, no longer listening to my "it's probably nothing" consoling. This breathing sound lasted for perhaps 15 or 20 seconds before the bedroom door was shaken at its hinges by an incredibly loud bang, as if a boot or fist were slammed against it. That ended the events for that night, but we, as you can guess, did not find any rest. The next major piece of this tale took place a few days later. I was at work, and my girlfriend was at the unit alone. I received a panicked phone call from her at work, in which she relayed the following. She had been sitting on the side of the bed with some of her university work spread out around her, just passing the hours and, at least pretending to, study. The bedroom door was open, and with the aforementioned living area directly outside, it is possible to see straight through that area and into the kitchen on the other side. She saw a movement out of the corner of her eye and looked over to the kitchen to see the cutlery drawer extend out of the bench all the way and fall entirely out onto the floor. Almost the instant this happened, the bedroom door had slammed shut. When she called me, she was outside on the side of the road, having pushed out the fly screen from the bedroom window and climbed out, too afraid to reopen the bedroom door. When I arrived home from work several hours later, this is where I still found her. She was that terrified that she had not re-entered the house. This was the first of several daytime events that led to the conclusion of this chapter. The nighttime events continued, with the breathing sounds and bedroom door knocks becoming something of a regularity alongside the stomping feet. I had actually recorded audio of all of this one evening, but the phone that this file was recorded on is long since gone, and as far as I can tell, I didn't have the foresight to make a backup. The grand finale was about a month after all of this started. I was having a shower, and our bathroom, like many in these older Australian homes, had a door with a window, which was made of fogged glass. You could see vague shapes and colors through it, but nothing significant. I was home alone, and after getting out of the shower, I turned to leave and saw a clear outline of a head and shoulders on the other side of this fogged glass. The figure appeared to be entirely black, with muted features. The only thing I can compare it to is a person in a morph suit. The figure spoke, saying something in a very whispered, muffled-sounding voice. To sound horribly cliché, it did appear to me at the time to be a threat or a warning, along the lines of, "Get out" or "Get it." The figure then looked like it turned away from the window, but instead of being seen to walk away, it simply vanished as it turned, as if it was only visible from the front, and as it turned, it just ceased to exist. This was the last straw for me. I didn't tell my girlfriend the details of the encounter, but simply started the process of moving. She was attending university in another city and had been staying with me while doing as much as possible via distance. I relocated within a week of this event to the city in which she was studying and moved into a place with her, leaving much of my furniture behind and at a great financial loss. But I couldn't live there any longer.
Couldn't decide whether to put this on /K/ since most of them have some pretty interesting stories to tell. But anyway, post away /X/. My own story, not very spooky, creeped me out at the time though. Be middle of the day in Queensland, Australia. Be out hunting on friends' property, riding around on quad checking the traps with 22 on my back. Get off the quad at the fence line. Cross fence line and walk to the trap along game trail, precariously above a deep gully. The trap has been set off. Empty? Sad me. Look up. Kangaroo staring at me no more than 30 feet away. I don't know why I didn't see him. Kangaroo jumps off down a steep hill into gully. Bush too thick to follow or get a shot. He was small, so really no use in shooting him anyway. Continue walking along the game trail onto this like point that sticks out into the middle of the gully where it makes a Y bend. Look down through bushes into the gully, hoping to see something to shoot. No luck. Turn around and suddenly get the feeling of being watched. Brush it off as being a wuss. Besides, the birds are chirping, so there mustn't be any monsters about. Duh. Start walking back up the trail towards the quad. Hear a loud snap on the ground about 40 or 60 feet behind me. Swing around, stopping dead, and pull my gun off my shoulder. Scanning the direction of the sound through the bush. Look left. Look right. Nothing. Huh? That's weird. Stand there for a few minutes expecting to see something. Feel like I'm about to be ambushed or some shit. Walk back to the quad, cautiously holding the rifle in my left hand the entire time. Not very spooky, but it's original and real. Thinking back, it was probably just a dead branch falling from a tree at a bad time. Pick related, the rifle I had with me.
I have a couple freaky stories from going fishing. Once off Double Island Point here in Queensland, we were in my mate's 5 meters center console reef fishing in about 50 meters of water. We had been getting sharked, as they call it, all afternoon. It's when you have a fish on and you're bringing it up to the boat, but all of a sudden the line goes dead, and all you get back is the head. This happens lots on reefs. It's mostly just packs of little black-tipped reef sharks attacking the distressed fish. This time was different, though. We were hooking onto some big reef fish, mostly over a meter-long kingfish and amberjack. Instead of getting just the heads back, we were getting nothing. All of a sudden, the line would just go dead or scream off faster for a second, like something big had got it. Now, a big shark will eat a whole kingfish easily in one bite. This, however, was swallowing the whole fish, and our leaders all the way up to the sinker in a single bite, so we knew it was big. The depth sounder had been showing big schools of these kingfish under us, but then the whole screen would get covered in this weird shape, like it was huge amounts of seaweed suspended in mid-water. At a guess, it would have to be 12 or 15 meters across. The weird thing was, we never fouled up on seaweed when we were dropping the lines. We guessed it must have been a huge ball of bait fish packed really tight then. Anyway, we went to go home and up anchor, but we must have got it caught on the reef and couldn't pull it up, so we tried driving it off the reef. After a few tries, it came off, and as I was pulling it all in by hand, my mate yelled, "Look at the sounder. There's something following the anchor up." I dropped it, and sure enough, there is that same shape we couldn't explain before. I go back to pulling it in, and as it gets about halfway in, it's like I hit a brick wall. Something grabs it, starts swimming off to our starboard side with the anchor faster and faster. I need to let go, otherwise I'll get rope burn. In about 5 seconds, all the rope is gone over the side and it's tied to the front bollard. The rope snaps tight like a whip, and the whole boat lurches in the direction of whatever has grabbed this anchor. I swear we were so close to tipping over because of the violence of the rope coming tight. Just as we almost swung fully around to face the direction the anchor was going, the bollard pulled screws and all out of the boat and went over the side. We noped out of there, as you could imagine. My mate, who was watching it on the sounder as I pulled the anchor in, said the shape definitely grabbed it and swam off with it. Now, we have seen plenty of decent-sized sharks here in Australia, but never have I encountered anything that size on the sounder. It would have been over 10 meters long. Best guess 12 to 15 meters. I still think it was a shark because of the way the line came up cut so cleanly when we were fishing. But a 12 to 15 meters long shark doesn't exist according to records, and if it was a shark, this fucker was angry. They don't usually carry on like that aggressively.
Far North Queensland, rural, west of Cairns, March 2016, was in the habit of climbing up and laying out on a shade sail above the pool in the evenings just to kinda meditate and stare at the stars. Would often fall asleep up there for a bit, but one night I woke up really early in the morning. I'd been out there for hours, so I decided to hang out a bit longer, just staring at the sky, wondering. Eventually, I sat up. Looking around the silhouettes of the mountains behind me, I noticed a sharp triangular shape kinda sticking out of the normal curvature of the mountain. The moment I realized it was abnormal, the thing instantly accelerated upwards into the sky and almost immediately disappeared. No sound or vibrations whatsoever. Must have been about the size of a 2-story Queenslander-style house, and no more than 50 meters away from where I was sitting. I sat there until the sun started to come up in total shock and disbelief before I went inside. Later in the week, in the exact same spot. I started staying out way longer and later than usual, still absolutely dumbfounded. A bright light appeared directly above me. Not bright at first, but a circular dim light that grew in intensity, slowly, then very rapidly. It reached peak intensity, then just vanished. I stayed out till the sun came up, and in the distance of the horizon, I could see this weird blob-shaped thing, like an egg, but kinda more angular, traveling in a horizontal line at a fixed speed while simultaneously tumbling and wobbling on a random axis. I never told anyone about this shit. Living here, I've had many weird night terror and sleep paralysis events of things visiting me. I know this was different. Maybe it's a mistake to post this. I don't know.
Not really scary, but a true story. Dad gets sick of city life and moves to outback Queensland, small town about 2 hours drive from Charleville. Not many people in town, maybe 20. Surrounded by stations, cattle farms that are vast. I'm talking hundreds of square kilometers. Dad bored, so asks station owners if he can drive around and explore. They are hesitant but say, okay. One day he's driving around and finds a huge gorge with a big water hole. Weird mounds all around the place, look like pillboxes but solid. Takes pictures and gets going because it's getting dark. Driving back along track, sun almost set. He looks and sees weird lights behind him. Look like car lights, but they are too high and are bobbing. They come up quickly behind, then quickly turn off track and shoot into the bush. Dad has no idea what it was. Gets back home safe. The next morning goes to the general store. Asks about the water hole but doesn't mention lights. That's Murder Hole Gorge. Back when the town was founded, the local Aboriginal tribe kept raiding and attacking the settlers. So one day they set a trap at the water hole. Hid around the mounds that were there, and when the tribe came back they shot all of them. About 50 or so. Threw all the bodies into the gorge, probably find the bones if anyone bothered to dive for them. Thought they were going there just for the water, but turns out it was a sacred site or something. Dad says that's interesting. The station owners have been there for generations. Do they know about this? Don't mention it to them, they want those stories forgotten. Dad mentions the lights he saw driving back. The store guy says lights pop up on the outskirts of town every so often. Station owners see them around too. They don't harm people, but no one knows WTF they are. I've been out a number of times but never seen the lights. There are dinosaur fossils and footprints in the rocks out there too. A pretty interesting place.
Story from my mum. Be late 70s, early 80s. Mum's working as a governess on a large sheep station in Australia in far southwest Queensland. Becomes friends with a young couple on the station next door. Hours or so drive from the property she lives on. Out one night checking fox and rabbit traps. Friends used to sell hides as extra income, as Australian summers can be harsh and livestock are not always viable in drought for income. Be an old slapped-out Holden ute. Pull up to the rabbit warren that borders a big grove of trees. Her friend's husband says, "Wait at the car, I'll go check traps." They get out and light a cigarette. Hear earth-shattering roaring noise. The husband runs out of darkness, white as a sheet. "Get in the fucking car!" They all jump in the car. Slams it in reverse and just drives backwards for around 500 meters. Hits a stump in the paddock. Snaps back to his senses, puts the car in gear and speeds off. The whole time, Mum and friend are screaming WTF was that. The husband doesn't know, said when he got to the traps. Blood and fur were everywhere, traps pulled out of the ground and thrown about. Was bending down to pick up traps and heard heavy footsteps running through trees and heard roar. Ran. There is rumors of escaped wildcats from zoos and American air bases in Australia, but to this day they swear the roar was nothing like a large cat's roar.
Be me, be kid. Live in Queensland, not far from Cairns, with my mom and older sister. Sit outside with my grandma, auntie and mom at my grandma's place. Clear blue sky, early spring. A barstool-shaped UFO comes spinning from the direction of our neighbor's property into view. Object makes a distinctive whooshing noise as it spins through the air. I look up and see it, and ask, "What is that?" My mom, aunt, and grandma all looked up at the sky, immediately panicking when they saw what I saw. My aunt and my mom rush me and the garden chairs inside. My grandma bolts for the phone, calling my grandpa, who at that point was a high-ranking police officer, yelling about the fucking thing being back. My mom, aunt, and grandma hide me and themselves in a hallway, devoid of any windows. My grandma tells me that whatever I do, under no circumstance should I look out of the windows or into any mirror until they say so. Hear this object slowly move across all the windows of the house, making a sound that resembles a mixture between a lawnmower and a servo wash. Hear this object move from the direction of various mirrors, glass-framed paintings, and framed pictures, too, as if those were window panes as well. Press my eyes shut, as hard as I possibly can, only opening them briefly when trying to hide and stay out of view of any mirrors and windows. Eventually, the object leaves, and my aunt tells me that it's safe to come out now. Walk into the living room unsure of what happened. My mom is visibly shaken. My aunt and grandma are anxious, but all right. Not long after both my grandpa and 2 other police officers walked into the house, not much unusual happened after that.
In Queensland, Australia. Going 4-wheel driving with friends in a forest with real predators and severe elements. Even the prey is poisonous, venomous, and will still end your shit. We see a wild dingo, 3 huge pythons covered in leeches, wild boars, and huge spiders. Drive deep into the mountains. There's an exit on the other side. Follow the road and pass the point of no return. Used over half a tank of fuel to get to that point. There's a huge tree blocking the path, so I can't go around. We try a different path and come across an old trailer with a heap of barrels next to it. Get my camera out to take footage. Since I'm not an idiot, something is about to go down. See, there's no phone reception, and immediately knew we are in danger. Phone 000, 911 for American. Since I know we are screwed at this point and have no weapons, it doesn't ring, so I assume it doesn't work. I later find out it would have worked if I didn't hang up. It won't stop trying to connect. We try to drive off, and my friend's car gets bogged down outside this Wolf Creek Caravan. It starts to piss down with rain, so we wait in the car. Night comes, and it's pitch black. Can hear multiple steps outside the car. Use logic and realize it's probably just the dingoes getting curious. Couldn't exit the car because of all the spiders and shit on the ground. Wait until the sun comes up the next day. No surprise it actually does. Get the car unbogged and try driving back the way we came. Run out of fuel just at the entrance and have to call my friend's dad drive 2 hours both ways to drop fuel off. He goes off at us for being dumb. We didn't open the barrels or look that much into the caravan since there was no smell and there would have just been spiders and snakes. But then a anon commented saying, "The barrels are used to get rid of the bodies." Which got me thinking, maybe the person who owns this caravan drives into town, snatches up someone and buries them in the woods in a barrel so no animals could dig it up. Why else would you need 10+ barrels up there? Maybe water. But after a day or 2 in that heat, the water is going stagnant. It's not really a spooky story, but it could have been. Pick related. I'm trying to see if I can find the caravan.
I think I saw an angel when I was younger. Live in rural Queensland, Australia. My father grew up here and has some pretty interesting stories and happenings, but that's besides the point. Live along a dirt road about an hour's drive from our small highway town. Property backs onto a huge mountain, no bad vibes most of the time, nice place to live. Every few months, though, a night would come along that really rattled me. The air would just feel energized. I don't have words for it, but it was terrifyingly sudden. From nowhere, you would just feel stressed and nervous for a few hours. Whole family felt it. Neighbors noticed this too. Locked up inside through most of these nights, but one time I was sleeping outside for shits and gigs. Crappy mattress, no tent. It was summer and the temperature was fine. Reading a book or some dumb nerd shit until the sun went down. Then I sat there looking at the stars for a few hours. Pretty close to a full moon that night, and the clouds passed across the sky incredibly quickly. With no warning, a wave of immobilizing terror sweeps me. A literal wave of negativity and fear passes across the area, engulfing me, much like a gust of wind. Plan to run, start scanning 360 around myself in fight or flight mode. Bad things in every shadow, incredible paranoia in my bones. I go limp on the bed and look up to catch some horrific figure seeping in and out of the cloud cover in front of the moon. It had an immense presence. Acknowledging what I was seeing was impossible at the time. It just wasn't real. It's the kind of shit you read about on /x/ and here it was, a kilometer above me in the night sky. It had the rough silhouette of a splayed rib cage connected to a flowing, torn gown of tendrils. No arms or head. The encounter lasts about a minute. I'm fucking mesmerized, just etching this thing into my retina the entire time. It was huge, fucking giant. It blocked half of the moon with its front half before fading back into the clouds. Stand, bolt. Run my little legs as fast as they could home. Slam the door open and slam it shut. Scare the shit out of my parents. I'm borderline frothing at the mouth and crazed. They tell me I was incomprehensible, and that checks out. Went into my room and wrote down several notes. One on my knockoff Chinese reading tablet, several on paper. They all use different words to say the same thing, and I'm thankful that I had the foresight to write it down. Do not doubt what you saw tonight. It happened and was real. No longer have the notes, but I have the vivid memory of writing them, and my family all remember this happening too. This shook my worldview to the core. You can't look at anything the same after an experience like this.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.